His name is Jim Pattison, and that about says it all. Born into a family which included a car-dealing father, Jim's natural salesmanship started to show when he was still at John Oliver High School. His years of selling cars and his rise to the top of the corporate and political world is legendary, as is his leadership during the Expo years. And right from the beginning, Jim Pattison seemed to know exactly what he wanted to do.
My ambition was to sell cars, and that's what I did. My dad was in the car. You know, my
Sure.
dad was worked for the Packard people in town here for many years, and until they went out of business. And so I'd been raised with, sort of in a car family, and I loved cars. I always liked people, and I liked selling, and you know, whatever. So it wasn't that. I never considered that work. You know, I sold cars going through school and university, but I also worked on as a pantryman in the CPR. I worked for the province newspaper on the late edition truck. I sold door to door over the years. Did a lot of that.
Now that may be the toughest sell of all, because with a car lot, people are coming to you.
Yeah.
You know.
No, it's
but
right.
when you go to knock on somebody's
Right.
door, you have to get their attention within 20
That's
seconds.
direct selling. I mean, direct selling is pure selling. I mean, you got to get up in the morning, you got to take your bag of tricks with you, and you got to go find the prospect, and you sell. And I learned that if you whistle going up the stairs, my odds of getting into the house went up over not whistling, because people sometimes they wouldn't even answer the door if you knocked the door, but if you were whistling, people were interested in happy people. And I learned I did on the law of averages. It improved I was selling pots and pans at the time, door to door, and I found I could make more presentations on an odds, and I have actually had the numbers worked out that if I whistled, it would improve my presentation so much a day.
You became a very good whistler.
I whistled really as long as I could, but more importantly, loud as I could.
You know how when we look back on eras, we like to romanticize it and say, boy, it was better than it really was. But that whole period at Bomac, was that as glamorous as it appears?
It was one of the great times of my life working. I worked for Bo McLean or Bomac for 10 years. And it was one of the great experiences of my life. Cars, it was after the war when cars were getting bigger and flassier, and the Cadillacs had the big fins, and I was fortunate enough to be with a guy by the name of Dan McLean, who was a tough guy to work for, but I liked him, and he gave me my head and let me run, and it was a great experience in my life.
Is it fair to say that your first car dealership that you owned was a major turning point in your life?
Definitely. You know, in my life, in business, there's been, maybe 4 or 5 major turning points, and that was certainly one of them. Yeah.
What would have been the next one?
The next one would have been when I went after Neon Products in an unfriendly takeover. That was a major turning point for me, because it took us out of what I was doing as an automobile dealer into a whole new game of takeovers, acquisitions, of which we have now done over 200 companies we've bought in the last 20 years, I guess.
Another turning point for you must have been Expo 86.
It certainly was for me personally.
Yes.
It wasn't for the company, because the company carried on doing what they were doing. But it certainly gave me a new change of life. And we budgeted everything around 13,750,000 people coming, and when you finally click 22 million, it's a pretty good feeling.
How big a role does religion play in your life?
Well, I've never considered myself religious in the sense of tradition. You know, I was brought up in the Pentecostal church, who tend to be fairly non-traditional in the sense, although as they get more respectable, they get traditional too. I think that that the values that I've had from my training, going to church and all of that, have had a big impact on me personally, and I try not to bring religion into the company in that sense, but I try to always aim for the standards that I believe that are the right ones.
What is the retirement age at the Pattison Group?
Well, it ranges from, we've had people retire at 58, maybe due to health, to probably 62.
So the median age would be 60.
Yeah, I would say 60.
How old are you now?
59. 60 this year. No, I'm not going to retire. I'm going to stick with it.
What a guy. Jim continues to divide his time between his offices in New York and Vancouver, and he has no plans to buy the CBC yet.
Eric's retired from his daily newspaper column. He now writes children's poetry, stage and radio plays, and novels.
We'll be right back with 1983 Juno Award winner for Best Jazz Album, Fraser McPherson.